Star Citizen 1.0 in the letter from the chairman, um, we thought it would be appropriate to talk about what 1.0 might look like. And so we came up with there's two big sources for features and things and plans for what release might look like in Star Citizen. The first of which was the CitizenCon presentation in 2016. And during this, they did a sort of roadmap. Obviously, it was wildly inaccurate, but it gave you a good idea of a whole bunch of things that they wanted to include, in Star Citizen going forward in the future. They were talking about leading up to 4.0, and I think that a lot of these things are probably going to be in the lead up to 1.0. But we also had the actual road to release presentation at CitizenCon 2948, much of
Not
which was
as
reiterated.
laughable
Yeah.
as 2016, but it got up there.
This is more of it didn't show any patch numbers or anything like that. It was more just talking about the if a presentation could be the theme song from Star Trek Enterprise, this would be it. Because it talked about a lot of the things that were leading up to the development on persistence, PES, and because PES wasn't a thing at this point. The plan, they really hadn't even named iCache yet. They were still just calling it persistence because it was a feature, a piece of technology that they wanted that they were building towards. But a lot of this presentation looks at a number of those pieces of technology. So if you haven't watched this presentation, I can't count how many times I've watched it. I was there for it live. I'm dropping it in the chat. If you're watching live on YouTube, it's going to be in the show notes. But I highly recommend you watch this presentation. It's only 23 minutes, but it does a really good job of grounding all the major steps that came before came before the failure of iCache, came before PES and the replication layer and the entity graph, and before server meshing, along with numerous other gameplay mechanics that are considered really foundational to the experience. So we're not going to watch this presentation, but I wanted to highlight it. But and we're not going to watch this part of the presentation at CitizenCon 2016, but this link will be in the show notes as well. It starts at 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 29 seconds, and only goes for like 6 minutes or so. I think is the important part before it gets into
the patch numbers.
Yeah, and this was the CitizenCon where they did the Planet Tech V2 initial demonstration of that.
The Layer 3 demo.
Yep, exactly. But I what I did is I downloaded these videos and I pulled some images of them, and so I'm going to show you those images from the presentations, and you can look at some of those features and think about, okay, do we have this? Is it in development right now, and or is it going to need a big refactor? So first and foremost, we're going to look at
crucial to a complete experience.
Exactly. Yeah. Is this something that would be included in what they're talking about? For sure.
Yeah, it is specifically complete experience. It's not, would this be cool in the game? Because the answer is yes. The idea of 1.0 is a rounded experience. Like you said, for it to be stable and for it to have enough content to keep players busy. He said for infinite, but for a good amount of time. For any expansion of the game to make sense off of what we already have.
I like to think of it as if you're talking about the professions and the sort of core mechanics like that. If you look at what mining is right now, imagine what that is for basically all the professions, and mining that's where they're
Orion.
Yeah, that's essentially where they're trying to get to 1.0, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, they've only gotten mining done. It's going to take forever." It's like, well, that's because the team has been growing like this, and now we're way up here. We have all these devs to work on all these features, and a lot of these features have already had a lot of work, and it's so it's not the same thing. It's not the same. It's not accurate to make that comparison.
A lot like the other systems that they've made. The ship naming, the ship customization with the 300i. They work on them, they release them, they work on them again, and once they get them to a place they're happy with, their development of it's done. Now it's just content, so it's feature done, feature complete, not content complete. So, with mining being a complete profession, minus Orion, they have the land or the not land. I guess landmarks. They have the plan of what a profession is. Now that that planning work's done, they don't need to do everything for everyone to get it all up to the same thing. So they have their plan. Now it's to get to the other features, and we can get back to the content that will make all these other professions line up with mining. Down.
All right, I'm gonna. So this is the first slide from that 2016 presentation, and so this is what 3.0, what they were targeting, and 3.0 wasn't released at this point, and so they call these the basic professions, and these are the things that we have right now in game and have had for years now. Cargo transport and training, I can't, I will not give them cargo, but we are that's the list, is and actually I should have made this a separate thing that we could look at, but we've been able to do trading forever, but the trading profession, what we have right now, is not what we're going to have in the future. They are going to make changes to that. You're going to be able to trade in finished goods, not just commodities. We're getting cargo missions in 323, along with the freight elevators and all sorts of ability to move cargo. So we're really sort of tying the loose end around that basic profession. Smuggling, we got a long ways to go on that. But piracy is, especially with all the cargo stuff.
Technically in the game. Smuggling is just cargo that's illegal.
Mm-hmm. But there should be more to it in terms of like shielding your cargo and avoiding patrols and blah blah blah. It's very rudimentary. Whereas piracy
if we're talking about basic professions, as in these features are complete, not that's just they're in some form. Is that where we're going with this? Okay, yeah. Smuggling's nowhere near then.
Yeah, they are in some form, but they're going to have to do work to bring it up to smuggling closer to the level of mining. But it doesn't really have to be, because it's sort of looped in there with piracy. But there's going to have to be more to the gameplay mechanic in terms, because they've talked about moving, not just flying into the spaceport and selling your goods. You're going to have to move them in,
and not just finding the one station
via the front door.
No questions.
Yeah, it isn't just going to be flying into the front door and selling it or not, and selling it at the right kiosk. There's going to be more to it. Yeah. Now we have bounty hunter missions, but it's very rudimentary, and so this you can kind of see how, okay, if these are some of the professions that they want in game, but they want them to be more at the level of mining is now, they do have a good deal of work to do to get that 1.0 release, because they want to have people who want to do piracy, who want to do trading or any of these other things, to be able to have the same quality of experience as somebody who enjoys mining. They want them to be feature parity, but yeah, so that's some of the basic professions. So let's look at some more of them. Obviously, we have mining. We can only refine at space stations, and so we need ship-based refining, as well as probably location-based refining. Your base and other outposts and such. Quantum interdiction, we have that right now, but it's going to have to get refactored in order to work with the new quantum travel system, because that works entirely different than what we have right now. We have refueling. It needs more work in order to make it more viable, but it does function as a mechanic. Obviously, it needs a lot of bug fixing, but that's in there, and is going to need some more work to get it up to a mining level of parity. We're just now starting to get escort missions. Holy crap!
Are we?
But that
what are we getting?
Well, we're not getting them, but they are working on them. They've been talking
Oh,
about
okay.
them in the other reports. Yeah. Um, but so a lot of the work leading up, in 3.0, 3.1, and so on, leads up to this sort of release of all the professions that they want in the game. And but you have to look at all those professions and gameplay mechanics as, is this a more complete experience? And a lot of them, it isn't. Now, obviously, Naz and I were talking about salvage earlier, and salvage has a lot going for it now. It's not mining complete, but it's made a lot of progress towards getting there. Um, we've got refactors of ships to get their components. Um, we have to get the full Maelstrom version of um, hull munching, because it's long live vehicle munching, uh, not whatever they call it now. We have the basics of repair that came with salvage. You can put skin back on ship. You can replace components, but we can't do structural repair, and we have none of the repair ships. So really,
And we have no. I know it's more engineering gameplay, but tuner.
yeah,
No tuner
tuning.
stuff.
Yep. And so that's going to have to come into the game, with the repair drones from the Vulcan and the Crucible repair ship, and
It's really
however,
interesting
go for it.
to see all the ships that they said in all of these slides that would come in and what we actually got.
Mm-hmm.
Because we now have all these ones, but there's a bunch
Yeah,
in the last one we didn't get. It's really
I'm
interesting.
gonna copy that. I'm gonna make a Google
And
Doc
socially
really
confused.
quick.
I have a thing that I ask anyone who brings up science, because nobody can tell me what you do, what the player does in the game to constitute science gameplay.
Yeah,
And I've not found a good answer for that myself. As someone who is trying to be a game designer, I still haven't been able to figure out what I would make science gameplay. Dang.
I'm going to make that a little
It's
bit
like,
bigger.
sure, you have a microscope, but that's could be just it. Well, it is placeholder art. But what do you do for science? Is it not box missions, or how is it not box missions, or scanning, or mining, or whatnot?
Yeah, how
Cartography seems
does
to be the closest. That's exploration. That's not science.
yeah, and we're gonna get to that too. You probe things.
So it's a thing.
Yeah, right, caveman. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us this evening. Yeah, engineering,
You probe things.
the
Yeah.
resource management, and that's really just for ships, is going to be tested in Marine Command in 3.3. Is targeting a 4.0 release. So I'm just going to go through these slides, and then we're going to look at the list that Naz and I have come up with, and it's definitely not all inclusive, but it's the things that we can come off the top of our head from the CitizenCon presentation, from looking this last year's, and then from these other two. But you can get an idea. So mercenary covert operations. So
Which is
this is the
technically coming in 323.
the stealth missions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think of is the stealth mechanics. That is this is going to be, and it's going to get more fleshed out with the features coming from Squadron. Being able to avoid scanning, using the being scanned, using the right equipment, using the different. What's the word for the whole system of like vaulting and
Parkour.
isn't there? It's your player parkour,
Player
but be able to
movement system?
the new movement and interaction system in order to be able to access areas. Yeah, there you go, traversal. Yeah, the new traversal system,
Oh, okay.
which includes all that stuff. That's a covert operations is a conglomeration of features that are largely already being developed for Squadron, being ported into the PU to expand upon mercenary missions to give you an alternative method of completing that mission.
So Junkyardin asks, are there some new unknown missions coming in 323? They're not legit public knowledge yet.
Yes.
How would we know if they're not public knowledge?
There's been lots of hints, but they've been saying things in the monthly reports about things, but they probably won't have a specific roadmap card, but will get talked about maybe in the what do they call it, Nas? The
Patch watch?
yep, there we go. I don't think that they
That
will
might
get
make it info, but floating around. I mean, we know what we know. We don't know. We know we don't know. I mean, how would we know about something we don't know?
yeah, and if it was data mined, there's a very good chance it won't be 323, but something later on, because there's a lot of things that end up accidentally into a branch that are being worked on, but aren't being worked on for that dev branch for that release, that targeted release.
And there's been a
Um,
lot of a lot of the prerequisite stuff was getting in, like leaking in, that data miners got for Quanta stuff, and that's way nowhere near.
mhm.
And they actually are pretty open on what mission modules they're working on. And the mission team and the narrative team, which are going to be what have taken over and are currently developing mission givers, are going to be doing with them. It's an interesting kind of because there will be slightly more mission types, not types, but missions specifically, that use the stuff that has been built to make new missions, but it will be new missions based on the processes we're already doing in the game. So the only thing new about it, like maybe we get a box of metals from a distribution center and bring it to the distribution center's store. Like, that's a new mission, but it's a box mission. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we're in for. There will come a time, mostly 4.0, that they have said, hey, there's a ton of new mission tech in 4.0. And we'll see a ton of new types of missions in 4.0. So,
And
depending on what you mean by new missions.
yeah, and there's a lot that they've been developing that they haven't gotten to. Okay, we've built this many pieces of the mission, but we can't build these other pieces of the mission until we get this, this, and this. And so they have gone part way with some of them. You know, you can go back and look at the progress tracker of the things that they've been working on, the mission feature team over the last 2 years. And there's a lot of mission types that have been worked on that we haven't gotten in game yet because they've been working on them, prototyping, you know, starting to get the ball rolling because they know they want to include them, but they can't finish that work until something else gets wrapped up.
Mr.
There's a farming
Reliant, do you
module
mean
on
the
the Endeavor.
Endeavor?
Yeah.
Not the Reliant. What's the? Oh yeah, the Endeavor. Yeah, that's the Endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has the funds to grab an Endeavor buyback chip, then I would definitely say do that. If is because it's going to get really big.
Mm-hmm.
Blame the beer. We blame the beer then.
Yeah. So here they talk about 3.3 farming and rescue. We have nothing for farming yet. Not even close. There's been no development. Just like it's at the same level as science.
Well, no, we know what
But
farming is.
yeah, we know what farming is, and they've been showing outposts. They've been showing the fauna. So I think that because they've been showing that sort of stuff off, I think we're probably going to look at farming as a 1.0 feature, a road to 1.0 feature. But there's been no development on farming gameplay. But we see all the modules, and to me, farming is another one of those things this is a location-based resource management thing in terms of in order to grow these crops, you have to give them water, and you have to bring the seed and put input fertilizer into this greenhouse dumper thing. And like rescue, we have medical tier 0. Medical tier 0.
2.5.
Yeah, and actor status tier 1. They have been talking about getting back to work on medical tier 1 in order to bring us medical tier 1 and actor status tier 2 for a couple of years now. They were going to get started on, and they said that they started on production for the Apollo. Haven't heard hide nor hair of it since the end of last year.
But again, scheduling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But rescue has, since the very beginning, been designed, medical and rescue, to be one of the most versatile and in-depth professions in the entire game. It's always been said to be that way. So there's going to be a whole lot more to it, but they have to get to work on that. And so, lastly,
do you guys know how complex the Idaho potato harvester is? That they cost $2 million. The John Deere ones that you're not allowed to touch because you obviously can't comprehend them. So you must be a stupid farmer person and not allowed to replace a switch on your own tractor. Those ones?
Yep. They're gigantic.
I hate that so much. Like, sure, they're complex, but dang it, this is their life. I think if you gave them a manual, they could figure it out.
And then 4.0, obviously we're coming up on 4.0 now. And a lot of those things, they're like, oh man, they're high as a kite if they thought they were going to get those in before 4.0 get those in. They were targeting to do this over the next year in 2016. Yeah. Good luck.
Oh boy.
But this is, they're talking about 4.0. They say travel to multiple star systems. This is before 4.0 meant pyro and server meshing, static server meshing, that has been the goal for several years now. So really, this is like the road to 1.0. All the gameplay mechanics and professions that they want to have on the way to 1.0. They want to have multiple star systems on the way to 1.0. They want to have exploration and discovery on the in 1.0. Science and research, all of that. We're not going to talk about ships because ships don't make the release. But this is really.
Can we quickly go through all of them and see what the ships that we got and don't have are? Because it's hilarious.
RSI Orion and the Crucible don't have. We got the Carrick. We got the 890. We don't have the Bandit Merchantman.
We got the 890 really early compared to this.
And that's going to need a lot of work. The Reliant, we have. Do we have all the variants?
Yep. We got everything.
Yeah. Gonna need refactors. We had the Taurus, the Phoenix, the Terrapin, all the Vanguards. We got the Reclaimer.
Got the Reclaimer. Well, we got the Reclaimer functional.
Mm-hmm. We have the 85X. We have the Prospector. We have the Hull C. We have the red and the blue, and of course the black, which was way old. I think
this page is the most funny.
Ursa Rover,
the
Dragonfly.
Rover, but the Aquila came a little while after.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I think that's hilarious. Just how completely backwards all of the ships were, except for the Orion and Crucible that we still don't have, and the Merchantman.
Oh, and before here, I need to.
I keep forgetting the A5X exists.
Yeah.
For some reason, I never have enough brain RAM to remember the A5X because I would never use it. Like there's so many other vehicles I would use before the A5X, and I love Origin chips. My daily driver, once I'm able to buy it in game, is probably going to be the 400i. One of my favorite ships in the game is the 600i. Oh boy.
Let's see. And I'm trying to. I thought the quote was in this presentation, and I can't find it.
Which one?
The 5 to 10 star systems thing. Do you remember where that was? I forgot to pull that up.
Not off the top of my head, I don't. I know a great resource to find out. To the Starchives.
So made this little list of things for 1.0, and a lot of it is things that were talked about in the CitizenCon 2016 presentation, because really this was a roadmap to release, not a roadmap to 4.0 presentation. But also a number of things that are in this road to release presentation, more tech-wise. but we broke it down into these groupings. And I'm going to, let's see, can I make this bigger? Full screen. There you go. So, what might 1.0 look like? Tech. Obviously, we need dynamic server meshing because static server meshing is just what we're getting in 4.0. It's going to be a static mesh of shard spins up. It has one replication layer and 4 servers. 2 for Stanton, 2 for Pyro. That's just a speculation because that's what they said the minimum viable product was. And they may do, in 4.1, they may increase that static mesh from 1 replication layer and 4 servers to 1 and 6 or 1 and 8, depending on what improvements they make. It just remains to be seen. But we need dynamic server meshing for 1.0. And obviously, they're pushing really hard for dynamic server meshing because that's part of the reason they're doing all this testing is not only to see where the server, see what configurations work best in terms of transitions from server to server, but also to try and stress the replication layer. Because with dynamic server meshing, you not only need to scale the number of dedicated game servers for the simulation, you also need to scale up the replication layer and make multiple replicants in order to scale up the size of a shard. To take that shard from 2,000 people at low hours to 10,000 people at peak hours or something like that, just as an example, and be able to scale it up and down. So you have to be able to scale up both of those things, and there'll be services that tell these things how to scale and how that all works. The other thing that we need tech-wise is the Vulkan API. Now, it doesn't look like it's going to make it into 323. We are getting the what's it called? Naz, the upscaling.
So time scaling. What? Oh no, temporal upscaling.
Yeah. There's 3 different versions: the FSR, TSR is the in-house, and what's the NVIDIA one?
DLSS.
There we go, DLSS.
So I love the difference between CAG naming crap and NVIDIA naming crap because temporal upscaling is what CIG called it. I mean, yes, technically it's under the umbrella of DLSS, but it's a specific feature in DLSS. And what it does is it just looks at the previous frame plus AI to predict what the next frame is going to look like. I forget what the exact, but NVIDIA's marketing for it did not try to describe that it works in 4 dimensions. Like, the monthly reports are definitely not a marketing ploy. That's for sure.
No. But it's good that we're getting that because...
oh, for sure. That's going to be great.
Yeah. And the Ben Perry, right? That's what his name was. He said in Spectrum recently he didn't know if Vulkan was going to make it into 323, but if you read about Vulkan in the monthly reports recently, they are very nearly to having it ready to ship. Now, obviously, it will get iterated on after it releases to us. There'll be lots of bug fixing and optimizations and such, just like they did for Gen 12. But it's a core piece of technology for both the release of Squadron and Star Citizen, because people still experience poor performance, and the Vulkan API is a big part of what's going to really improve people's performance by really better utilizing the GPU and being able to allow for parallel and multi-threading on the CPU. So that's the other big tech thing. And then I had included global illumination underneath that because really, and wasn't there another thing that they showed off at CitizenCon after global illumination?
There's fire.
Yeah. But really for it to be considered even a current gen game, you really got to have global illumination these days. And it's going to really make things look great.
Which I'm happy about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I will take your ray tracing and VR.
Mm-hmm.
VR is probably. I
ray
wonder
tracing.
if VR is actually going to be GI is ray tracing.
Yeah, yeah. I just meant to. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
There we go.
People sometimes do try
Well,
to split
because
them up, but
yeah, well,
GI
because Global
current talk
Illumination
of
uses
GI
ray
is
tracing, but you can do other things with ray tracing besides just GI.
yes. Like a lot of people thought that ray tracing meant reflections when NVIDIA did it. Um, but ray tracing can be applied to a vast array of things, being global illumination, reflections, including sound. And the sound guys back 2 years ago, I think it
I know
was,
what you're talking
talked
about.
about they would
Reverb.
really like. Well, ray tracing sound is actually not just reverb. It specifically is able, because of how rays work in computer, they are able to pick up data as they bounce around the scene, which means it can tell what surface, if you give the surface data, what surface it's bouncing off of. So you can actually have a sound system that says, okay, the sound's bouncing around. We're in a cloth environment, so we're going to dampen the sound. We're in a metallic environment, so we're going to bounce down the hallway, and you'll be able to hear us much farther away. We're in a big room, so we'll have a lot of echo. We're in a small room, so it's going to sound really claustrophobic.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of sound systems, much like how lighting has been affected by ray tracing, a lot of sound systems have been built to mimic these things, so that you can give the environment, like the room system that they use, you could give that the data to say, hey, you're a small room, you're a padded room, you're a metal room, have these sound characteristics. With ray tracing, as long as you build the materials or the surfaces with the data, you don't have to build in the audio system that is static. Ray tracing can do it dynamically. So you can have one surface be cloth, one surface be metal, and depending on how the sound physically bounces around the environment, it will have different audible characteristics, which is terrible for anyone like who has like cinematic specifics. So for the film directors of game development, but is amazing for like something that like a dynamic game, something like you build in, because you can have this giant environment and then build up whatever you want, and the sound system could dynamically change to that.
Yeah, it's systemic versus having to handcraft a bunch of stuff, and
Yes.
you'd still have to handcraft like for Squadron, you'd have to handcraft their cinematic scenes and everything, and certain portions of the gameplay to get the exact thing that you wanted. But it would reduce a lot of the workload, especially for like the multiplayer universe. And then I think that Maelstrom is definitely a 1.0 thing, partly because you need Maelstrom for the real version of hole munching. But
I think
there's
1.0 is a 4.0 thing.
yeah, we'll see. It's the thing is with Maelstrom is a lot like resource management in that we're gonna get Maelstrom for ships first, and then they have to also apply Maelstrom to everything. So environment, pieces of the environment and other stuff. Yeah,
I think we
that
get
stuff is
or I think Maelstrom props are already done. They could put the concrete barriers in 323. I think
yeah, yes,
like the system's there. So I think that's what I'm classifying as will have it by 4.0. It will be included in some way in the game in 4.0.
mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the how much of the environment besides the ships is going to be maelstromed by 1.0, and hence the question mark. Because I think we're definitely going to have all the ships be maelstromed, and we'll have parts of environmental aspects, and we don't. That's the thing is they never in the presentation they didn't tell us how much of the environment they want to be destructible and what things are going to be destructible and what won't. And so we don't know what things will be made maelstrom and what things.
I don't think you're
Uh,
going to be going to ArcCorp and demolishing Area 18.
yeah, exactly. But the outposts that they've created and derelict space. It's where do they draw the line? I think it's going to be really interesting. But it's also going to be a lot of work. But I think that the more important part is getting it in for ships so that it works alongside resource management.
Yeah.
So, but at what level of the game will be maelstromed, maelstrom apostrophe D, by 1.0, we don't know. but it's definitely a tech thing that will be introduced in the very near future. How far they take it between now and 1.0 remains to be seen. So gameplay, yeah, and this isn't an all-inclusive list, but this is really the gameplay mechanics and the um, uh, professions. And I didn't re-include the things on here that were in that presentation, like I and the things that are already in development. Like we're getting cargo missions this next in 323, so I didn't put that on here. But we don't have base building. That's gonna, we know it's gonna be, they're getting to work on it this year. But base building, isn't a profession, but it's a gameplay mechanic that is they see as
I
necessary
mean, it
for
could be a
1.0.
profession.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be end up being its own profession, but it's um, will there be base building missions? I don't know, maybe. Um,
Oh, that would be
but
so cool.
yeah, I think it'd be cool.
Like an
I
outpost.
think that
Hey, we actually like put our resources together to buy ourselves a new evaporation tower. We bought the resources. You just gotta come here and set
mhm,
it up.
yep.
That would be so cool. I love that
I think that
idea.
could be a post 1.0 thing that they include. But obviously, they
Oh
talked about
yeah, for
crafting in the
sure.
CitizenCon presentation. Crafting is part of base building. You are crafting a base module
If Morph
and
is
then
playing
things
this
in
game
it.
by the time 1.0 hits, I will be impressed.
Yeah. Um,
Like I know he likes the game. He does not love the game. And he says that like every other stream. I would like this man to be happy. He's done a lot for the community. Go play Space Engineers. Like
and
he
stop
literally
making
had
stuff up.
this like not gonna trying to be nice here. Trying to be nice. He made when he made his Kraken in Space News video, he was so gosh darn happy. And he said, I think the stream after, that his Space Engineers content is just not hitting as hard as his Star Citizen content. So I'm forced to make Star Citizen content. That's not how the internet works. You are a professional architect. You have enough income to not need YouTube. Please do what makes you happy and
Hmm.
play some Space Engineers.
Yeah, mental health is far more important, for sure.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
we can only refine at stations. We can't do the refining ourselves. The reason refining hasn't gotten more work is because of resource management.
Yep.
Refining is just resource management in a specific location or ship. It is you taking a resource, you put it into this container with these other resources and put in some sort of input into the recipe system, which is what resource management is, and you get an output. That's all that refining is going to be. But we're going to need, I think that they're definitely going to need ship-based refining, and I would hope that we're going to have outpost location-based refining on the road to 1.0. If they're building
I
base building and we don't get a refinery module as part of base building before
so
1.0, I'll be disappointed.
so I just thought, which makes sense to me, that there will be probably a building or building module, however they want to build the system, to statically do anything a ship can do. We already have seen the mining towers, we've seen the medical building, so we know the stuff like that. What if there probably will be some sort of salvage building, kind of like the grinder wheels in the
Mm-hmm.
reclaimer, which means you can use your SRV to pick up ships, go back to your base, and drop it in the grinder.
Makes
And then
sense
you
to
could
me.
use the RMC around the base.
And repair your ships when they come back and stuff. Um, they've been talking about Bounty Hunter V2 every year for like the last 3 years. And that can just
Oh.
keeps getting kicked down the road. And so
Why does it
this
keep
is
getting kicked down
something
the road, Tree?
Because Bounty Hunter V2 is reliant on aspects of quantum that aren't the economy. There, quantum, and people think that quantum is just the economy. It is not. Quantum is the entire AI NPC simulation that runs in the background that feeds data to not only the economy but other services. Like the security service, like ATC, the oh gosh, I'm brain farting. Anyway, without quantum, Bounty Hunter V2 really can't be a thing because it's really not going to. We'll get updated gameplay mechanics, like scanning, and being able to do non-lethal takedowns, and being able to secure people into the non-functional pods of the Hawk and what have you. But we won't get the systemic Bounty Hunter V2 that they've been trying to build for so long. They will get it done. We're going to get Bounty Hunter V2 in on the road to 1.0, just like we're going to get Quantum on the road to 1.0. We just don't know when. Because this is a mechanic and a game. It's gameplay that
It's
Chris Roberts. It's foundational. It's something Chris Roberts loves. It's something he's talked about over and over again. He mentions it himself in basically every letter from the chairman for the last 3 years, except for this last one.
But this
we're
last
going
one
to
had
work
some
on
specific things to cover, so it makes sense.
Farming is on the list partly because we're getting base building, and they showed the dang, what are those towers called, with the plants, the oh gosh, having a stroke, Naz. Hydroponic towers. Yeah, the that's going to be farming. You're
they've outlined, I don't know what video it was or what, no, I know it was a video. I don't know what video it was. But they've outlined what they had thought when we had the current outpost and they thought that was going to turn to base building. What farming would be with the current little farm hexagons we have now.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been thinking about this a while, and it has always been attached to base building.
Yep.
And ship farming has always been like a farming on a ship.
And it's really not that complex of a mechanic either. All I can think about is like, can I get can I use my tractor beam, but instead of tractor beaming individual radishes, can I hoover them up into a backpack?
And they said a little while ago, I forget, it was specifically about. No, I don't remember what it was specifically about. But it was casting a net tractor beam, and they said for physics reasons they aren't able to do that right now. I forget why exactly they said it, but tractor beams cannot do net stuff right now. There's some tech problem with net capturing multiple things in physics.
Yeah,
which I was most bummed about.
But that was in that 2016 presentation, which was really a road to release presentation, and they keep on showing farming stuff off with base building as well as all the outposts that we see. And it's not just growing plants, it's livestock. And they're showing off the damn cows. And we're probably going to get the dang cows soon, amongst other things. If you end up using the two-handed cutting tool to butcher your cow or something barbaric like that, who knows? But I totally foresee that being part of the 1.0, the road to 1.0.
Or do it like 7 days and just do a knife.
Sure. Yep.
We have knives.
Mm-hmm. I'm just imagining squeamish people, and how gory did they get it?
I would love squeamish people to go look up a video of Red Dead Redemption skinning.
Yeah, no joke. And the noises almost make me nauseous.
Oh man. I would love to talk to or at least see a video on the Fully artists for Red Dead Redemption 2. Oh, that'd be great.
Yep. Yeah, socially confused. So farming and so many of these things are going to use the same code that resource management is built on. That's why when they say resource management is for everything, it is literally for everything. They're even going to apply the resource management system to your armor and spacesuits. There will be components in your armor and spacesuits. They will use resources. They've been talking about this for years, and Zach Priest just reiterated it in SCL, or was it ISC? I forget which one, recently. So,
I don't remember. However,
yeah.
if there is a system in any game anywhere that has an input and output, it is probably a reskin crafting system.
Yep.
Even XP for upgrades could be defined as a crafting system. You are doing something to input into a system to get an output. Everything's a crafting system.
It's all the same code. It just has to be they have to change the visuals for it and where the input output locations are, but under the hood, the code is basically the same. How many ticks does it take? Does it require not only a input of a resource, but also an input of of labor, or a number of ticks, a period of time, all these sorts of things.
I imagine. So M. Walker said, "I really wish there were space station with domes like the Endeavor." The only reason we don't have farms on space stations is because they're not developed yet. Space stations,
could be a thing.
has been said. I believe it might have been Cysicon, might have been after Cysicon. Space stations are a ghost of what they will be. They will eventually have internal trams and districts.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to get really big with gameplay. I imagine somewhere along the lines of building interiors coming in.
Yeah.
So,
The
whether
reason
it's
that
an
space stations are so
farm,
limited right now is because of the lack of server meshing. And if you thought about how big the exterior of our space station is and how much of that interior space is taken up by what we use, they're going to be huge.
it's big. And whether we
But
get actual
yeah,
biodomes or internal hydroponics or aquaponics or grow lights, whatever we end up with, that's mostly to do with the location science. Because the reason the Endeavor is the farming ship is the lore behind it is you can get exotic plants and then search out those exotic stars to feed that plant. I'm not sure how sun-grown plants do on a space station that's probably spinning and orbiting a planet. I mean, I guess it'd be somewhere like planting on the moon. I'm not science. I don't know that one. What it'd be like to try and farm on a space station.
yeah.
Because even on the ISS, they do it with grow lights, not with putting potted plants in the window. Actually, that's geosynchronous, so it's always pointing the same way. I'm pretty
Well,
sure
I think
the
it's
Leos
because
are
of partly because of the radiation and the light. You'd have to have some sort of filtration system to protect them, because if the light is not coming through an atmosphere, it gets very dangerous and bad for you. It would probably get very dangerous and bad for the plants as well. My favorite.
But New Babbage does have a domed park. All of the Commons is a domed park.
Mm-hmm. I imagine we'll see more, but it's the
Oh,
same
yeah.
thing. Why are the landing zones so small? Because of lack of server meshing. It doesn't make sense to make them bigger and then fill them up with NPCs who don't do anything but take up server resources when a player population is only 100. When the player population can go up, these cities will get bigger. That's why there's all those doors that you can't open and have like tape or whatever on them, because they are meant to go to other places so they can add more content later. But it didn't make sense to do it at the
you're
time.
not allowed to go hacking.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, you don't have hacking on here.
So I didn't put hacking on here because they talked about hacking for 4.0. Remember?
Okay. I don't.
Yeah. Because I did think about it, and that'll be hacking tier 0.
So, okay, so you don't think we're gonna get the Legionnaire in 4.0?
No.
Okay.
I think if they were working on it, they would talk about it in the monthly report. But we'll see.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We do know it's coming in the next 12 months, but
yeah, let's say hacking tier 1 at least for the Road Pro 1.0, because hacking tier 0, hacking was talked about in the last ISC of the year at the end of 2023. Um, and Jared talked about hacking for, I think what he specifically talked about 4.0 and Pyro and server meshing. So
They also
my
talked about
personal
it
favorite
for DCs.
for what?
For DCs, distribution centers.
Oh yeah, yep, exactly. So my personal favorite is medical, because we are going to need a lot more medical gameplay and gameplay mechanics. Regeneration isn't regeneration right now; it's just a respawn mechanic, where there's no uh, imprinting, there's no traumatic response echoes. Um,
There's
there's no
no
cost to
resource cost.
regeneration.
Yeah.
Yeah, no resource cost. We're supposed to get a lot
Your
more
Carrack at
statuses.
890s will run out of biomaterial to respawn your character if you don't keep it filled.
I don't even think your Carrack and your 890 are going to be able to respawn. That's something that Paul and I are like, we butt heads on so much, because he thinks that tier 2 beds should be able to regen, and I don't think they should at all. I think it's superfluous and unnecessary.
Well, considering they
But that's
want to
just me.
make the bed mechanic 10 times harder than it is already, it would make sense that the respawn is only at major locations.
Yeah.
Specifically not in Pyro.
And I think that it could be in Pyro at Ruin Station, and maybe they make it so, a couple of the other stations, that because there are Leo stations in Pyro. And I think you could make
But
it
the
so the
tech
Leo
is
stations have them.
new.
Oh, I know, but they could have gotten the jank version, but I wouldn't give it to every tier 2 bed, because that just seems ridiculous. Because why? Because everybody's like, well, they said in the regen article that every lowly station has one. No, they say every lowly station has an imprint capable scanner. They don't say anything about regeneration.
Yeah. And scanning in
Imprinting,
is something very, very different.
yeah. Scanning and imprinting are a different mechanic. Yeah, you should absolutely be able to, update your imprint at any tier 2 bed. Totally on board with that, 100%. Because what they did with that technology is the equivalent of making a CT scanner as universal as it is right now. You can go in almost every rural hospital in the United States right now, and there will be a CT scanner there. Most every rural hospital.
It also makes kind of like a what's it called, reinforced mechanic.
Yeah.
If you and a buddy are going, let's say on a Carrack, you both put your imprints on the Carrack, so they're saved. You have a save point basically.
Yeah, and you can
But
update that save point when you're out exploring.
One of you, right, and then one of you die while you're out in the field. The other one gets back to Carrack. You can then take those imprints back to a hospital and say, "This is the version of the player I want."
And the big thing is you have to have regeneration be limited in order to make it be more consequential. It can't just be a cost. It has to be this is the hard reset. Not only is it going to cost you money, but it's going to reset you back to this main location, or this location where it's very even more expensive to use it. So, because everybody's like, well, if it's only at landing zones, then there won't be enough of them. There's going to be NPCs flying around in Endeavors and Galaxies and Apollos. Yeah.
So, M. Walker, if every Deep Space Explorer, Carrack, Odyssey, has a respawn on it, what is the difference between deep space exploration and exploring right next to a station?
Yeah. The exploration thing is a garbage argument, because exploration needs to have risk. And if you only regen because you suffered catastrophic death, okay, you need to have risk. Okay, do I do this thing that is very risky when I'm way out here in the middle of nowhere? And if I die, I'm going to respawn way back over here. That's the risk. If all you do is just respawn here, there's way less. There's not enough risk.
I don't know how
it's no different than real life. That's the thing.
I don't know how familiar anyone is with Dark Souls. There's a very specific vibe with the respawn mechanic that they're going for. It is specifically off of Dark Souls. They want the I saved a half an hour ago. I need to be incredibly careful kind of feel.
Yep. That's where
Specifically with far from home places. Specifically with places like Pyro, where they are fewer and far between and a lot more hostile.
that's why it makes so much sense that you can imprint at a tier 2 bed and keep that save updated if you want to, if you plan ahead. And even in with that tier 2 bed, you can still do a lot of healing, but tier 1 injuries and regen is the last resort. And so it encourages you to use that tier 2 bed and good decision making to prevent getting tier 1 injuries, to prevent having to end up dying and having to regen. But there has to be consequence, and there's not enough
like
consequence
Dell's,
if there's
comment.
what is it? There's how many stations are in Stanton now?
A
20?
couple dozen?
Yeah, I think there's almost 24 stations plus the landing zones. There's over 24 places you can respawn at right now, not including ships, and that's without NPCs.
Four
Even in Pyro,
plus 4 plus
yeah,
4 times 5. Is there 5 Lagrange points for each planet?
yep. And I think every single one has, or most of them have a station now.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. I think
it's like 24
somewhere around
to
32,
30.
give or take.
Yeah.
Because there's the landing zone plus the Leos plus the 4 jump point stations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Plus 4 times 5 about Lagrange point stations.
Yeah, there's no benefit to having tier 2 beds being able to regen. There's no benefit to it. And I think
Only
people
one
just
place
forget
that
that
no
NPCs will be flying around in Apollos and Endeavors and Galaxies to provide that service to you, and you'll be like, that's something they've been talking about for years. Is what we have right now where you bleed out and die is not what's intended. It's intended for you to be downed, and if somebody doesn't, revive, provide treatment to you, then you essentially go unconscious, and you would wake up in a bed and be not regenerated, but have been rescued by an NPC. And that's how the mechanic's supposed to work. The only way you die is if you suffer catastrophic death. And that's the part that people don't understand is that, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get downed and bleed out over 2 minutes, and then every time that happens, I'm going to die. No, the whole point of the bleed out mechanic isn't supposed to be death. It's supposed to be you go unconscious, and then you wake up in a hospital bed somewhere because a NPC came and rescued you, but you didn't die. The only way that regen is only supposed to occur with catastrophic death, and that's the way it's always supposed to have been before regen was even had a name. This is something that Chris Robertson and Richard Tyler talked about in 2019, and even Death of a Spaceman before that.
Yeah, catastrophic, like your ship blowing up. So now think of, with all that what you just said, how often your ship's going to be blowing up. Not very often.
Yeah, catastrophic death is meant to be rare.
Yeah. So a lot of the features that we went through, that Tree's gone through so far, have implications on making your ship less explodey.
And making you less explodey as well.
Yes.
And what we're getting right now with the FPS changes in terms of the time to kill changes for FPS. That's part of the direction that we're going at. So, and this is something that Richard Tyler specifically talked about. They want you to there's going to be escalation of injuries because you take a few hits, and it takes a few hits to get through your armor, and then you get a tier 3 injury, and then you take a few more hits in that same location, and then you get a tier 2 injury. Well, this whole escalation of taking injuries is encouraging you to, okay, stop what you're doing, go get healed, or get treatment or whatever, to plan ahead rather than just keep on going until you die.
Yeah. Many people don't know this, and it's going to be us two and Paul have known this is coming for a while. There's a reckoning coming for the Star Citizen community. Star Citizen is actually a brutal game.
Yeah.
It is going to be difficult. It is going to be dangerous.
And the
A
scale of
lot
that
of the ways.
difficulty will be based off of where you are.
Yeah,
If you are
Stanton's the
yeah,
safest option, and it's still gonna be quite difficult
yeah,
because like the difficulty of even Ninetales. Ninetales is like a dime for like 200 of them, right? When you say, "Hey, if you respawn, you're gonna lose a limb, and if you lose 4 limbs, your character is dead, and you lose 10% of everything you own." Crap's gonna get real.
mm-hmm. Oops. All right, so that was a tangent about medical, but I can't not go on that
Yes.
tangent whenever I see it. Personnel transport. They've been talking about personnel transport missions and wanting to get back to that for a long time, but that is a profession. We have multiple ships that have been developed for that. There is going to we have every uh, station and every landing zone has a place where you go to get transported, where NPCs will go to get transported. There's a lore. Crusader owns a space airline. They bought the station that is in orbit above Sherman on Cascom in the Castro system because they use it as one of their major hubs for their space airline. It's in the lore. So that's
Is that
a
Meridian?
gameplay. What's that?
Is that Meridian?
Oh, I don't know if it has a
Meridian
name or not.
transport?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
It's on all the
I
lore
just remember
books. Meridian is the one that's on everything.
yeah, the if you go and this is old Castra lore. So if you go and look at that, they talk about it. Um, but that's going to be a career and a gameplay mechanic, not only for you doing the personal transport, but you being able to be transported. You going up and showing up there, and then okay, I pay for my ticket. You hop in your ship, and then you wake up in a different system, different location. Exploration and discovery. We know that there's going to be the ability to scan and find things. They, you know, there's going to be a lot of that is blocked by us getting the new star map and features getting added to it. But with new star systems and new locations, we're going to have both FPS and ship based exploration and scanning and discovery and being able to utilize that information for your own game. Like Naz was talking about with science and research, no idea how that's going to work. I haven't the foggiest idea. Maybe it'll have some sort of resource management built into it where it's recipes. Um, I don't know. I'm not sure how they're gonna go with that. They haven't
It's
talked
not.
about it in ages.
It's not Meridian.
Yeah.
Meridian
We
is
talked about
its own company that apparently has a lot of places to Xi'an name here. That used to be a military outpost against the UE. But they're only just the Starliner fleet.
okay.
So
We talked briefly about hacking. We should see the first implementation of hacking this year, but they'll continue to expand on that. And then I separated features just because it's not really necessarily gameplay, but it's features for the game that are tied into that. And so the organization system is something they talked about in the road to release. Oh, here we go. Where's that image? Here we go.
give
This is
org
the
to
last
the
slide for the road to release presentation from CitizenCon 2018. So the org system, full persistence, and server meshing. We are here. We're about to take this step over to
Well,
here
we're
into
there minus
static.
the organization system.
Yeah, but that's the thing is we have this. We're about to have this. We only have the website-based organization system. We have none of the features that go with this that tie into the game. So,
I really, really need stupid org wallets and org fleets. It is
right? Yeah. Everything
So
that
we
you
currently have
your guild
so
systems
my
for every
org
MMO.
has an alt account now specifically to act as the bank. The org wallet is now the character currently, and so only one person can log on
Do
to
you
that
put
account
the
at
UEC
once.
in his prison wallet or?
No, should I be? Um. Anyway,
Sorry, I
um.
had to.
So all the org sends their profits to alt account wallet, and then payroll is done with that wallet. So somebody has to log in and pay out to all the members.
Oh God.
Yeah. So all the executives, which will have access to the org wallet eventually, aren't able to all have their ready hands on. Said what they have to log out and log into that character, and then ships. We can't say, hey, who needs access to ships for this event? We have
Mm-hmm.
to go and spawn it ourselves and have all the problems of trying to spawn. And then we have to go into the ship to open the hangar because not owners of the hangar can't, or not owners of the ship can't open the hangar first. Just give us org wallets and stuff,
Yeah.
please.
There's a whole series of org-based permission sharing type systems that have to come in and not only be in the game but also be cross coordinated with the website. So that way you're not having to go into the game to add people to your org and do all that. There's some things that will probably have to be in game, but there's a lot of that stuff that really should be external, but it all needs to connect. And so that's a big hurdle for them because the org system is old, you know. Um, so that's a huge, to me, that's probably one of the bigger features and a really big quality of life thing when it comes to multiplayer co-op type gaming. Oh God, nope, we're not going there. Nope. We talked briefly about quantum. Nazeris and I have talked about quantum multiple times on the podcast. Very interested in quantum, but quantum is really going to be something we need for 1.0 to give them that experience that they're talking about that they want for 1.0. They're really going to have to get quantum um, well integrated into the game and meaningful. Um, Especially with dynamic server meshing and the ability for quantum to um, uh, alter the probability volumes and the amount of NPC interaction we'll have in a lot of systems will absolutely skyrocket. Because right now the probability volumes are dialed way back because they spawn NPCs that have to use essentially a lot of subsumption logic, and they're costly. And so we need to be able to dial that up in order to make the universe feel more alive. But we can't do that until we have dynamic server meshing that can handle those NPC populations. Um,
Oh boy, I just realized we still have the roadmaps to go.
yep, it's a long one, but we'll burn through the roadmaps pretty quickly. We'll just have to
Yeah,
avoid tangents. Location
because we're
based
so good at that.
resource management. Yeah. We're getting resource management for testing on ships in Arena Commander in 323. That's what they're looking at right now. And they're talking about releasing it with 4.0 on ships. But resource management is tied to everything. So they're going to have to go in and build the resource management system into every location. Your landing zones, your space stations, your asteroid facilities, your UGF's distribution centers, the outposts, the bases that we can build. All of that is going to have resource management to some extent and gameplay that goes with it. Um, the resource management also is going to be built into armor and suits, and I think that is a core part of the 1.0 experience.
Yep,
Uh,
I agree.
Having that added afterwards. Mm,
No, I think armor suits the vision for armor suits specifically personal armor and the whole resource management and armor system in general, which could also be in feature. Uh, the ship armor system, but also the personal armor system. I think what they've been talking about with it using resource management and it being very specific, and the stuff they talked about at CitizenCon with it being profession and what was the other axis they talked about? It's what you're doing, and I forget what the other axis was. I forget what it was. So like there's a medical armor, but there's like a light, medium, heavy armor. So I guess there's
Oh yeah,
tier
I know what
and
you're talking about.
profession.
Mm-hmm.
I think both of those, or all three of those, are will be in before 1.0. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make any sense for them to put in more armored features post 1.0 because they all build off of the set of features. It's feature complete,
Yeah, and they
not
don't want
content complete.
new players to come in and get used to playing a game and then have it dramatically change after
Yeah.
1.0. They'll make they'll make additions and updates and things that add into it, add on to the foundation of all these features that's been developed, but they don't want to make dramatic sweeping changes to an established player base. And everybody's, because that's the thing is, it isn't, we're not the, we're only a portion of the target audience. The target audience is much larger. So, um, lastly, and I apologize because I know Naz and I have both heard it a million times. A lot of people have, but locations in, I want to say it's in this presentation somewhere. What if let's see, 10. Um,
Let's see if I find it. You keep going.
yeah, I it's been said somewhere and I just forget where, but Chris Roberts said at release they want to have 5 to 10 star systems in. So um, everybody's like, "Oh my God, they're just now adding Pyro, and it'll take them forever to build that many star systems." Building star systems is not hard for them. Filling them with content has been the difficult problem, and now that we're getting past the hurdle of server meshing, they can unleash the tools that they have to build star systems quite quickly, and they're going to continue to work on those star systems. Hence the Planet Tech V5 that they talked about essentially at CitizenCon, the using a algorithmic AI and algorithms in order to generate more realistic planets and build star systems that way. So after Pyro, they're really going to need to work on getting the next several star systems in to the game rather quickly to be ready for release. We know that they have already gotten back to work on building interiors now that UGFs are coming in 323. They talked about how building interiors were paused while they were working on UGFs. But now that server meshing is, we're going to be getting static soon. We're going to need dynamic server meshing for building interiors to be able to scale up populations in landing zones. But they
Specifically to have the interiors not have to the interiors not have to have effect or performance problems on the farther away
exactly,
places.
yeah, they can make a building stream in on a new server at any time, essentially with dynamic server meshing. If especially if it's going to be full of NPCs and multiple players and such. But that's definitely going to be a 1.0 release. And then something that I've been interested in for a long time, it's on the roadmap, something they did a bunch of work on, asteroid facilities. And I think asteroid facilities really are probably one of the last major location types that are going to be added. There's going to be more, but in terms of major locations, we're talking about building interiors, outposts, distribution centers, UGS, whatever you want to call them, landing zones, space stations, and then asteroid facilities. The sort of like 5 main types of locations we'll be visiting in order to really have that sort of very fleshed out universe in terms of gameplay, features, locations, and technology to get that very complete experience. But yeah, so that's it for what might 1.0 look like. I'm going to change screens really quick, and we're going to open up the roadmaps, and we'll burn through the 4 roadmap roundups we've had so far this year. Look at the content that's being planned for 323, and then we will call it a night. Thanks for sticking with us. This is a long episode, but we've been trying to get this done for a while, and a lot to talk about. So
Yeah, I think the 5 to 10 was actually before this, because I think they specifically
yeah.
say we don't know. This is a feature-based talk. We don't know how many we're gonna have at the time of these features completing. I think that was specifically what they said in this one. But I will go rewatch that tomorrow probably.